Hi everybody, I'm back, and after my mini lecture in the last video about Blade Runner 2049, I thought I'd come back and just do a short one today, which is about the last book that I've read, and that book was Don Winslow's The Force. And as I've said before on this video channel, I'm an omnivorous reader. I read crime fiction. I love fantasy, but I often find it not worth talking about. And then I might read, most likely I'll read the Booker Prize winner, which I think gets announced next week. So I'm always going all over the shop. But I do love crime novels. And one of the reasons is because I think we can all identify with the protagonist, whether it's the hero or the criminal. They're often surprising. And my favorite author of all time in the crime genre is James Ellroy. I've read every one of his books, and American Tabloid is probably in my top 10 books of all time, and I just absolutely love it. So I'd heard a lot about Don Winslow, that he was the heir apparent. He'd written some books like Savages, The Cartel, and nearly always being the reputation being he dealt with quite complex subject matter about how no matter what your intentions are, the theme seems to be you will be corrupted. And those earlier works nearly always were about drug trading, and especially between Mexico and the US. So when I heard about The Force, the first thing I heard was I saw a tweet, should I say, by Stephen King, who said that this book is great, and I think it's on the cover, mesmerizing, a triumph, think The Godfather, only with cops, it's that good. Okay, so Stephen King, who I love, The Godfather, which is in my top 5 movies of all time, and but about cops in New York, I just thought, okay, this is it. This is the book for me to finally dive in and read a Don Winslow book. Don Winslow is a really interesting guy. I just researched a little bit before. I mean, often I don't do much research on authors. I'm much more knowledgeable about actors and directors. So he kind of grew up in a knockabout family, and his first job was working in the New York Times Square area. So if you're watching The Juice right now on HBO, he would have been in that time when the Times Square was just a ghetto, drugs and prostitution and everything. And he worked for some of those movie studios, or should I say theaters, and then he became a private investigator working in that area, and then he became an insurance guy, and he went out to California, and he was writing always on the side, and eventually he got his big break, and he won like 1 million awards, and now he's a full-time author. So the reason I bring that up is really I'm going to talk a little bit about the cast of characters, but the number one character, the number one thing that you get about reading this book is this person knows intimately how New York operates, its geography, how that influences how people's behavior, what street's good, what street's not, who runs this part but who doesn't run this part, how they carve it up, and all the way the different factions within the criminals, the different factions within the cops, the different factions within town hall, how they all intermesh in this really messy way in which gears are grinding all the time because they're going in different directions. And that is by far the best part of this book. I mean, it is brilliant. The guy can write. The first chapter, I remember, when I finished the first chapter, I went, okay, this could be the new Ellroy. It is beautifully written. And it's not like he forgets to write for the rest of the book. It's about 500 pages. He keeps going, and he is very, very good. He's great at drawing his characters. You know who all the characters are. You know their quirks. You can see them in your mind's eye. You always know what is happening. His clarity is not the problem. What I will say is, for me, around a third in, the book takes a little bit of a turn into a new direction. It's not like it's crazy, space invaders don't arrive, anything like that. This is a crime cop novel set in New York. But it does take a slight turn, and what happens after that is I felt I was distanced a little bit from it. He has to do a lot of exposition work to make that turn even believable, even in a way in which you kind of get what is happening. And from that point on, I really found myself losing a little bit of steam. And that goes on probably till the last act, where it comes back into a bit more focus, and then you're back on the steam ride as you head over the hill, and you're coming towards a conclusion. So all in all, I guess we should just quickly cover the plot. The plot is about this elite North Manhattan detective unit, which are tasked with really getting at the drug trade and getting guns off the streets. It's in Manhattan North. They're known as the Force. They basically get away with whatever they want to do, and everyone will turn away as long as crime stays down and gun-related crime stays down. And from that unit, it's headed by Denny Malone, who is this classic kind of Irish guy, hard drinking, but first guy through the door always. He's brave, he's physical, but he's a smart guy. What I like about it is all the characters know what is happening in the world. So when racial politics comes up, when anything comes up with like identity politics or that, these guys know what is happening. They're not stupid. They're not parroting just cliches. They're well aware that even though they might hold that belief, why that belief might actually still be wrong, or why they should do something different and they don't. It's a complex world. He's dealing with a lot of complexity, and sometimes that works for him and sometimes it doesn't. So you've got Denny Malone. He's got Montague, a black detective, who gives a very interesting perspective, because in one part of it, he talks about how he's scared for his children just as much that they'll be shot by a cop or a drug dealer or a gang. So this is a New York detective saying that. So I found that his perspective quite interesting. His best friend is Russo, old school Italian. They're all from like Staten Island, which is this holdout. Basically, everyone on Staten Island's either a cop or a fireman or something like that, real old school kind of thing. And they had a partner, and this happens all in the first chapter, and something bad happened that night. And then they're living with that and the decisions which they took that night. It is a really good book. I think if you like crime novels, you should read this. I am reading that maybe I should have gone back and read some of the other ones first. A lot of people rate the Mexican books, like The Cartel, a little bit better for Winslow. But I was not disappointed. I really enjoyed this. And I think my expectations were just too high. It's not Don Winslow's fault. This is a really, really good book. But I just thought that this might be the new genius to take over Elroy's mantle. Now, just before I finish, I'll just tell you about the next book I'm going to review. And it shouldn't be that long because it's a fantasy book. It's a bit easier to read. And that book is Blackwing by Ed McDonald. It's his debut novel. And really, for a fantasy book to get on my radar, everyone has to say this is great, because so often I pick up a book and I'm so disappointed. Either the guy can't write. They often can do one thing. They can do the world building, but their prose is hopeless. They can do prose, but their characters are just ridiculous. And often it's, multiple fallacies or issues. This guy so far, nice writing, nice really interesting world. I hadn't encountered it before, even though it's, I guess, a typical grim, dark fantasy world. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So that'll be the next review. So look, if you like my movie reviews, book reviews, pop culture stuff, hoping to do a little bit more now that we're heading into Halloween. If you like all that stuff, please subscribe and click the bell. And the bell means you'll get an email whenever I put new material. And I try to do something a week. And I'm on Twitter at Guru Eden. Okay, nice to talk to you. I'll see you next time.